Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Gradcracker webinar with the Royal Air Force. I would firstly like to introduce the Gradcracker members of the panel. So hello, everyone. My name is Jess, and I am Marketing Director here at Gradcracker. And I have worked with the RAF for nearly 10 years, which is a long time. And Sophie, could you please introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophie, also a director here at Gradcracker, and I look after a number of the employers who advertise with us. And I'll be supporting Jess on the RAF webinar today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Soph. So during the webinar, our aim is to find out more about the RAF. So we'll talk about who they are, what they do, and find out more about the opportunities they have open for applications. So firstly, we're going to start with our contact, Rachel, who's the Outreach Team Manager, and she will introduce you to the RAF and talk more about the Defence STEM undergraduate scheme and the engineering officer roles. We'll then speak to Mark and Christian, who are both engineering officers, to find out why a career in the RAF is like no other. We'll then cover some of the student questions that have been submitted before the webinar, and thank you to all those who did. And then we'll end the webinar by discussing the recruitment process and giving you, our audience, an idea of how you can be successful when applying. So let's get started and meet the RAF. So Rachel, I'm going to start with you. Please, can you give the audience an insight in today's modern day RAF?
Yeah, sure. So the Royal Air Force is the airborne side of His Majesty's military. We do a number of different things as the RAF. So we protect the UK, its assets, Crown dependencies, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Yeah. So we also provide the nation with choices in times of crisis. So if something kicks off somewhere in the world, then we can launch our aircraft. And we're really great at getting people in the right place in a really speedy time frame. We also do international peacekeeping, and we're a force for good in the world.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. And please, can you give us a brief introduction to the roles that you have live on your hub on Gradcracker?
Certainly. So on Gradcracker, we have the Engineering Officer Aero Systems, and we also have the Engineering Officer Communications and Electronics.
Fantastic. So yeah, we're going to talk to you in a little bit more detail, Rachel. We're going to come back and find out about the recruitment processes and all your hints and tips on how the audience here today can get a good application in and be successful. But Soph, we're going to come to you next, and you're going to introduce the rest of the panel.
Thank you very much, Jess. Thank you very much, Rachel, for the introduction. Mark, I'm going to start with you. So you've been with the RAF since 2005, so I've had a very long career with the RAF so far. But can you give us a little bit of an insight on why you decided to join the RAF?
At the time, I joined the RAF quite late. I was 20 years old, and I just had the sense for adventure and something different. I didn't want to become one of those people who stayed in my hometown and, lived 2 doors down from my parents and knew the same people my whole life. I wanted to go and experience things, different places, different people, and really challenge and test myself. I won't lie, the Air Force never really occurred to me until quite late on. I actually grew up in an army town and was kind of put off by the military from that. But if you're talking to peers at school and college and their parents who'd served in the Air Force, they actually really opened my eyes to what opportunities they offer as an employer, but also as a lifestyle. It just seemed like an exciting challenge.
Amazing. And you've done many things in your career so far, but you've obviously worked your way up since 2005, and you also had a little break from the military, didn't you? Sprinkled in there as well.
Yes.
So could you give us like a very brief history of your career so far?
So I joined in 2005 in what was Trade Group 4, which was the communications profession within the Air Force. I went to recruit training at RAF Holton, and then to my specialist training at RAF Cosford, which in total took around a year to complete. After that, I went to RAF Marham in Norfolk, where I was part of what's a communications squadron providing support for equipment. And I was also fortunate enough at the time to deploy with some of the Tornado aircraft around the world and experiencing more of the aerospace side of things from my background. I then had 3 years living in Cyprus, what we like to call a sunshine tour, which was fantastic. absolutely best experience of my life, and I'm actually applying to go again if all pans out well. So really great opportunity in your early 20s to see a different part of the world and a different culture and way to live life. From there, I spent 6 years at RAF Leeming on tactical communications wing, and this was at the height of the conflict going on in the Middle East. Deployed multiple times out into theatre, providing deployed networks and supporting systems to ensure that operations could run really effectively. As you said, Sophie, I had a small hiatus from the Air Force for 2 years, retrained as an electrician, spent another year living overseas. As I said, I wanted to travel and experience the world, but did this one off my own back. But I can remember sitting in a bar one night in Tenerife, talking to an old Army warrant officer who said to me, I've been out 10 years, but I still miss what the military offer. It's the people and it's the experiences. And I just felt at that time, despite having an amazing adventure, I was still missing something in my life. So I joined back up. I then went to RAF Scampton on a unit called One Air Control Centre and deployed again multiple times in support of the Middle East. Had a completely different job to anything I'd done before. So a whole new experience. I come in, revitalized, refreshed, and had a different challenge, which was fantastic. And at that point in my life, I was, hitting my 30s, well into my 30s actually, and decided actually this is probably a career for life for me. So I applied for commission. Was extremely successful to get through a very, very challenging and competitive selection process at the time. And the RAF funded me through a degree scheme. And I've fairly recently completed my training and now into my first post as a junior officer.
Amazing. I mean, that was a very succinct 20-year career, basically.
Yeah,
but there's so much that you've achieved in that. And we are going to explore that in more detail. But I thought it would be a great way to start by just giving, in a snapshot, just what some of the things that you can achieve in a career in the RAF. And that just gives such a breadth of experience that you've already had so far. So coming back to your current role, so right now you are an engineering officer, so the roles that we're advertising on Gradcracker for our students. Can you give us a very brief kind of introduction overview about what that role involves?
So with the breadth of experience I had as an enlisted aviator, I was put into the cyberspace professions advisory role as a staff officer. What that means is I have an understanding of what our output is from a communications engineering perspective, that I know what people are going to require and the needs and the output that they need to deliver in operations in the UK and day-to-day support. It gives me a really good standing to understand our workforce and how to best resource that, how to make sure you've got the right people in the right places, the right amount of people or equipment. It's very much like playing a intricate game of chess with a lot of Excel spreadsheets at the moment, but I have a massive sphere of influence for such a junior officer. I've got effectively 3,000 people that I have a responsibility to make sure their careers are progressed in the correct way, and we're also delivering operational output for the Royal Air Force.
Wow. And is that quite typical, that level of responsibility for a junior officer, or do you think that's because you have that sort of 20-year background, or is that quite a typical sort of level of responsibility?
I think with the current state of the military, I'm sure everyone's read in the news that recruitment's quite challenging. We're getting smaller and we're expected to do less with more. So very much a lot more impetus is put on junior officers straight out of training to kind of hit the ground running. It's challenging. It has its trials and tribulations and good days and bad days, like any job. But for me, I'm very people focused. I want to make sure that I do my best and I do the work correctly to make sure they're reaching the output. So, to answer your question, yes, I think if you're coming as an officer, you're expected to be able to deliver output straight away. You'll get the support you need, you'll get the mentoring you need from your peers around you. But you're also given that autonomy and that responsibility and trust to be able to produce that on your own.
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. That's a really great introduction to the webinar, giving, kind of an overview of what you can achieve. I'm going to come over to Christian now, who's had a very different journey to you in terms of how he joined the RAF, but it's going to be kind of a more typical journey that our students might undertake, those that are watching the webinar today. So Christian, could you start by telling me where you went to university and what you studied?
Yep, so afternoon everyone. I went to the University of Leeds and I did aeronautical and aerospace engineering. I signed up for the master's degree, and then in my third year I went over to the industrial placement side of it. So my fourth year of university I did a year in industry in Southampton, and then I went back to the University of Leeds to do my master's year in aerospace engineering.
Great. And why did you decide to excuse me, did you decide to look into a career in the RAF?
So for me, it was kind of sixth form when I first started looking at it, and I looked at Gradcracker actually, and saw what sort of jobs I could do for somebody who has an engineering degree. And again, like Mark, I didn't grow up in a didn't have anybody who I knew who was in the military. Didn't go into an army town. Grew up in London. Don't have much experience with the Air Force, but it just appealed to me. An engineering officer in the Air Force, and you look at the website and you see all the things you can do and the options available. But it's a big. It can sometimes feel like a quite big jump. So what I did, I went to University Air Squadron and applied to that, and that's a really good insight in what the military is like for people who don't know anything about it. And in my time in the University Air Squadron, Yorkshire University Air Squadron, I ended up going to different stations. I ended up doing skiing, gorge walking, 100-kilometer walks in the Netherlands, and the people you meet as well. I think, again, when you don't know people in the military, you think people in the military are completely different people, but in reality they're just like anyone else. They just want that experience or that sense of adventure. So you meet those people, and that kind of set me on my path to joining the Air Force. I then, to confirm it, I did a year in industry in a civilian engineering job, and it was all right. It's a decent job, but it's just not the experiences which I had. It's not the same people as I had when I met in the University Air Squadron. So I applied for a bursary with the Air Force, got it in my final year of university. So they gave me some cash, and joined just after university. And now I'm here about 8 months into my first job.
Amazing. So I'm going to bring you back in here, Rachel, actually, just to touch upon the bursary scheme. Could you tell us a little bit about how that bursary scheme works? Because I think you've got two different ones that you advertise with us.
We have indeed. So we've got the Defence STEM undergraduate scheme, which you apply for in year 13. And that is where we will pay for your university fees up to £9,250. You get a £5,000 grant per year, and you also get to join the University Air Squadron. So you earn another £1,500 for the days that you do on the University Air Squadron. And if you fancy flying, you also get flying lessons too. So that's the first one. Of note, you don't just have to apply in year 13. If you wanted to get a part DSIS scheme, Defence STEM undergraduate scheme, you can apply in the other years too, still for that sponsorship money. If you aren't successful at getting the Defence STEM undergraduate scheme, because why not try for it, get everything paid for, then you can join on the bursary scheme, which is where you get £3,000 per year. You can only apply for that in your first year or your second year, and you just get paid for the year afterwards. So it's going to be £3,000 a year.
Yeah. Amazing. So that's a great opportunity to get some financial support whilst you're at university, and also get the benefit of getting involved in the RAF life sort of early on. So Christian, coming back to you, what is your current role at the RAF? Which side are you on? Are you on the aero systems or communications side?
Yeah, so I joined as an air systems engineer. My
Mm-hmm.
current job, I'm a staff officer like Mark, but I'm in the ISTAR Force headquarters. So ISTAR stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition and Reconnaissance. Best way of thinking about it is our sneaky beaky aircraft. These are the ones which, and you can check on Flight Radar if you have it. The River Joint will fly along the coast of, along the border of Russia, and it will just collect information, as much information as possible, and it's just processed. So I'm in the engineering and logistics team who support the River Joint and other aircraft. We've got aircraft which search for submarines in the Atlantic. We've got aircraft which do they provide intelligence to people on the ground. My responsibility is for the shadow aircraft, so I have to ensure that the force commander is able to deploy his aircraft when required and when the military, the government deem is necessary. So ensuring that the aircraft are maintained at an appropriate time, there's sufficient equipment wherever the aircraft are going, the engineers have got the appropriate training and authority. That's all done by the ISTAR FHQ, Force Headquarters Engineering and Logistics team.
Wow, that is so cool. Amazing. So that's the first role that you've got after you've undertaken the training to be the engineer officer. So you've done, is it 2 years previous to this of training, and then?
So in total, I've done a year. So 6 months of just officer training, and then about 6 months of engineering officer training, and then my first job outside of training.
Amazing. So going back to the training and kind of what that, from going from university, obviously being part of the University Air Squadron, and you've got an understanding there of a bit about RAF life, to then, you know, stepping foot on the first day of training, kind of take me through what that looks like, that kind of 2 different 6-month training programs that you went through.
Yeah, so it's a slow build up of kind of your responsibilities and your militarization. So you go from people who have never been in the military at all, and then 6 weeks later you are you're marching around, you're in uniform, you learn how to hold rifles, you learn how to salute and all the other sort of things. That's also when the enlisted aviators, they join us, they bring their experience from their however many years in the Air Force, and then from then you get a kind of a slow build up of learning how you react under pressure, and how you make decisions, to learning how the teams you lead react under pressure, and how you can utilize your team to complete an objective. And then there's some assessment at the end of it, and then you have your nice graduation, you get a sword, you march off to music, it's lovely, your family can visit you, and then so that's phase 1, that's officer training, and that's at Cranwell. And then had a short 3-month hold, and then I went into engineering training, and again it starts off from almost from zero. So you go over the fundamentals of aviation and aerospace, and then you go into more specific about what you do as an engineer officer. So being in command, or making technical decisions, or you're doing staff officer work. And again, you have a smaller graduation, your family come, and then off you go into the big wide world.
Amazing. So much to learn in such a short space of time. I can imagine it could seem a little bit daunting looking from the kind of outside in to all the various things that you have to do to kind of get embedded into military life. But no, you've summed it up really nicely there, Christian. Thank you so much. My next question is I feel like we kind of already touched upon this, but Mark, I'm going to come back to you. Can you tell us about why life in the RAF is no ordinary job?
I think the tagline sums up, it is a life in the RAF. It's not, a 9-to-5 job. We may in some roles go to work 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. that's really, really important for, you know, a bit of stability of life and what we would call a harmony post, especially for those who go into a squadron or a unit who deploy a lot, where they may be on shift work or in and out of the country or training quite frequently. But it's very varied across roles, across both mine and Christian's areas of responsibility, and all the different professions in the Air Force. So it depends really on the role. As you can see in my background, there's a picture taken yesterday. I went and played a charity rugby match, and I probably spend too much of my career away playing rugby or sport. It's a fantastic opportunity to meet different people out of the normal areas you work, but who will have a common interest, a common goal. You can have that wider team bonding, and you'll just be visiting a camp and you'll bump into someone you know. It's almost inevitable. It really is almost very cliche, but like a really tight camaraderie of people. I've had opportunities to travel the world. I've been to, I think, pretty much almost all continents at some point, in some guise with the Air Force, whether that's through operations, through postings, opportunities to play sport, training and development. It just offers so much. And you know, away from sport, there's opportunities to the wider extracurricular opportunities. If you're into esports, if you're into chess, if you're into windsurfing, if you can think of something that you love doing, there will be an opportunity to do that in the Air Force. And if there's not, if you find that niche, there's an opportunity to make it happen. It's really, really important for me, and I think for a lot of people in our position on this panel, to promote that into the service, that you don't just have to come to work 8 to 5. You do your job, but absolutely take the opportunities that are offered to you, and they are numerous. I live in quarters with my family, so I've got really, really subsidised accommodation costs, much lower than what rent or mortgage equivalent for that sort of house would be. Food is subsidised, education is subsidised. We don't pay into a pension, but you know, after a full career, you come out with a healthy pension, and that is absolutely worth its weight in gold. So I could probably take up most of this webinar going about what the benefits outside of the day-to-day job are, but there's so many there. And it's just up to individuals for me to go and seize those opportunities and make them happen.
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. And I think this is something that we hear year on year when we talk to the RAF during these webinars is, you know, it's a lifestyle. You know, if you join the RAF, that's really what you're buying into, is the lifestyle. Yes, the work is amazing, but everything else that surrounds it really makes it what it is. So that's thank you very much for that, Mark. Christian, have you got anything to add here about why for you the RAF is no ordinary job?
Yeah, so I think Mark very well covered the bit outside of work, but the bit inside of work is what I think is also amazing, and it's kind of a necessity from what we do. We have to ensure that we have the best aircraft, the best technology, so that we can do what we need to do in the world. So it means that, you know, I'm currently working on introducing a new aircraft type to service. We've got upgrades constantly on the aircraft, and equipment upgrades and things like that. So it's always working at the cutting edge of what can be done in the Air Force, and in aviation in general. So you comparing to when I did a year in industry, when you're working on an aircraft which is going to be, the same aircraft is going to be built for 20 years, to the Air Force, where within the space of, I think, in the space of the next year, there's 2 new aircraft types coming to the I-Star Force and an upgrade program, and then an aircraft going out of service. So it's that opportunity to just work on the most new equipment, cutting edge equipment, just isn't available outside of the military.
Christian, without going into trouble asking questions, but so you'll work with quite a variety of people then, I can imagine. So you'll be working probably with external clients to help support you create these developments. as well as obviously people within the RAF, but then people within the RAF, again, that work across different fields. I can imagine you're constantly speaking to lots of different people, if not even just people outside the RAF, so external different industries, employers that maybe would be on Gradcracker.
Yeah, the RAF work very closely with industry. So Boeing provides a lot of support to our Poseidon and Wedgetail. Wedgetail's one of the new platforms coming in. We've got Raytheon, companies like that. Even I went recently to a little business in Louth in Lincoln, because they were looking at being able to provide a service for the Air Force.
Okay.
So the opportunities to work with
You
industry,
still get that industrial kind of
Yeah.
experience as well, going out and meeting different clients, working with different people.
Yeah, and that's probably more so as a staff officer in a force headquarters than if you're on a squadron. If you're on a squadron, it's very different, and you might work with Boeing, but it'll be from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point, Jess. I think you kind of look at the military, but you forget that actually, the day-to-day work is, it's you're going to have similar experiences, you're going to have similar learnings, you're going to get the same soft skills that you would get, in kind of any industry. And I think that's really important to kind of note. So thank you very much for that. Rachel, I'm going to bring you in here too, because you've also had a very long and varied career with the RAF. So could you tell us for you why the RAF is no ordinary job?
I get bored very, very easily. So I needed to find a little niche where I would be kept on my toes. So my background is actually weapon systems operator. So I fly on the back of helicopters. So I've done, well, within that role itself, you do an awful lot of, well, you never stop. So I do voice marshalling, I do navigation, I do engineering on the aircraft, I have to do the walk rounds. I deal with underslung loads. I deal with loading the aircraft, working out the weight and balance, because if it's loaded incorrectly, then it won't fly correctly. And I was never sat still doing nothing. I mean, I was even a gunnery instructor. So I used to teach the lads how to fire the guns. I wasn't initially very good at it, which is why they made me a gunnery instructor, because they kind of said, if I could do it and learn how to be an instructor, then I'll be able to teach anyone. So, it's just the way that it is. But yeah, so for me, it's the unknown, never knowing what your day is going to bring. Obviously that's changed for me a little bit now because I'm doing recruitment. So I've been in a static role for 10 years, but I chose that because I've got a little boy at home. So the RAF has been really good in the fact that it's let me change roles so that I can get home stability.
And that actually leads me on really nicely to my next point, which is that work-life balance is important, and it can be a kind of really common misconception that life in the military doesn't allow you to have that kind of normal home-life balance. Now, Rachel, obviously you've just told us that isn't the case, and tell us a little bit more about your experiences there.
So when I was dangling on the end of the wire, basically doing search and rescue. So the minute I found out I was pregnant, it was like, I can't really play conkers with my body anymore. So I ended up coming away from flying, and they gave me a desk job for the time period whilst I was pregnant. And then the idea was that I would go back into the flying world after having my little boy. But it so happened that it coincided when search and rescue went over to Department of Transport, and it went over to Bristow's. So I was given the opportunity that I could go back and fly on a different aircraft type, or I could apply for a different job. So that's what I did. I've gone for the outreach role, which means that I now go and sell careers around the schools. But again, I've had career progression. So whilst that allowed me to do Monday to Friday normal working hours, with the odd occasional evening where I was working or weekend working, but I get time back for that. So that was really good. But I've managed to progress because now I look after the national team. So I look after 65 people, whereas I started off as a sergeant with just looking after me. So it's worked really well for me.
Amazing. And I think that's a great example of, you have those conversations, you say, this is what I'd like to do, and the RAF will support you where they can to make sure that you're in a role that's going to work for you. Mark, can you tell us, a bit about your experiences, the work-life balance aspect and how you kind of manage that?
Yeah, very similar story to Rachel. I get bored quickly and I like to move around. And I've always been one of the first people to put my hand up to go somewhere, I'll say a little bit spicy. But as I've got older and priorities change, I've now been located at the same location for around 4 years, with the exception of initial officer training, and that's really provided some stability. There are opportunities out there for people who, if they want to stay in a specific location, to do that. It's not always possible. You know, there are limited places in the Air Force for people to go. But there's always a conversation to be had, and you know, people will kind of get the stigma attached of the hierarchy says do this, you're going there. It's not like that. It is a grown-up conversation where we can map out and plan what we'd like to do going forward, and that's across the ranks now. People can have a flexible career where they don't deploy. There's implications with pay on that to adjust because you're taking away a certain aspect of the military requirement, but that gives people a time frame at least to have that stability. If you have just had a child, or if you just moved house, or you just want that stability for a few years. For me, I'm always ready to up and move and go away, as I said. So it's never really been too much of a burden for me. But I am cognizant, and with my team, I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be able to, you know, enjoy life outside of the job. Yes, the RAF, as I've said, and you know, a massive advocate for, is a lifestyle. It's not the be all and end all, and you know, family is so important. We're much more cognizant and aware that people need that ability to have family is their priority. And as long as they're doing the job day to day, and we've got people producing output for the Air Force, commanders, leaders, they do try their best to make sure that people are happy. It's not a perfect system. No, I don't think any employer can make every person happy all the time. It's like a silver bullet, but we are there to try and be able to do that for people. And I think, without kind of going into the tribalism, I think the Air Force are miles above our sister services, the Army and the Royal Navy.
Well, you would say that, wouldn't you, Mark?
I do have a bias, yes, yeah.
No, I think that's a really kind of what we've covered there is really important, because there are going to be people that are like you, Mark, that you are just up and ready to go whatever, do whatever, you know, that's what they want out of their career. But I think it's for those people that maybe weren't sure about the RAF, you know, if they're the ability to have that kind of stability if required, even if it's only at certain points in their life, is good to kind of know that that's an option. And like you said, it's a grown-up conversation. So that's great to kind of cover that as well. I'm going to move on now to kind of the training, development, educational side of things, because I know there's so many different options within the RAF to kind of do additional qualifications. So Christian, I'm going to come back to you here just to kind of get your experiences so far about the different educational opportunities on offer at the RAF.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm quite at the beginning of my career, so the opportunities have been kind of representative of that. But even, you know, straight out of phase one training, officer training, you can get, I think it's a diploma in leadership and management, I think, something like that. After phase two, you can get a, again, I think it's a BSc or something in management. And you know, constantly there's opportunities which I've seen to do like a master's before my next tour, or you know, I've also seen the opportunity to do a fully funded 6-year or 5-year doctorate. For me, again, I'm at the beginning of my career, not something I'm looking at right now, but there's definitely something I would be interested in the future, either in a doctorate or another master's, or just doing something completely different. I've got colleagues who do CAS fellowships, so they've written about I think, sorry, Rachel, I think you're going to have to step in about CAS fellowships if you know anything more, but they do something completely out of their job, and they can get a master's in I think in arts instead, and they can take a year out to do that. So again, that's something which I might do in the future.
It's quite nice knowing that you've always got an option, haven't you? You know, you're almost thinking further afield already, Kristen, to say you're so early in it. You're thinking, you know, in the future, you know, even potentially 10, 15 years time, that could be an option, or, you know, whatever. And that must be quite nice to think so early on that you're thinking, oh yeah, I could do that later on in my career.
Yeah, and so
Rachel, go
on, Rachel.
So we have something called learning credits as well. So whilst Christian's looking into all these different things, we have a lot of our courses are affiliated to other degree courses. So if you wanted to join in with Stafford Uni or Lincoln Uni, I think they look at what you've done already, and they will take away some of the time frame that you need to get another degree. So you can either do that through sponsorship through the RAF itself, or you can use your learning credits. So you get standard learning credits, which is £175 a year, or you can get enhanced learning credits if you've done a certain time period in, and that can be anything from £3,000 to £6,000 over a 3-year period. So it's like £1,000 or £2,000 per year to put to whatever you want. So it's a really good scheme. The thing about being in engineering, though, which is extra specially good, is they will sponsor you to get your masters, but they'll also sponsor you to get your chartered, and they'll pay that registration fee for you as well. So that's really good at the moment. I'm not saying that pot of money will be there forever, but it's certainly there at the moment. I can't see it going away anytime soon.
Good, that's good to know.
No, that's great, and that's something I'm really glad you touched upon that, Rachel, because chartership and you know those extra qualifications for our students are something they do really look for in their kind of future careers. So it's really great to mention all those kind of additional things that you can do, and it sounds like it's really encouraged as well within the RAF. You know, that continuous learning, that getting extra qualifications, which is great. So I'm going to come back and kind of look to the future now for Christian and Mark about what your careers could kind of look like in the future. So Christian, looking to the future with the RAF, what does that look like for you?
So I started this job in February. As engineer officers, junior engineer officers, we tend to do about 2 years in each post.
Okay.
So February 2026 is my next sort of change of role. I'm already trying to look at going to the Falkland Islands for 6 months to do something a bit different. OC, Officer Commanding Armament Engineering Flight. And then after that, I'll be looking at doing a Django tour, which is a Junior Engineering Officer tour, which is when you're responsible for making decisions on aircraft. So, deciding whether an aircraft is fit to fly, whether it needs to do more maintenance, whether that maintenance can be deferred because you've done a risk assessment and actually it's fine for now, but 10 hours time it may not be. So that's next kind of 2 years. After that, there's a lot of different kind of directions I might want to go down. There's flight test engineering, where you take a year out to become a flight test engineer, and then you're working in aircraft, in the cockpit, doing tests and evaluation on aircraft. I also spent a bit of time this year doing a bit more diplomacy, actually. So working in MOD main building in London and with partner nations all around the world. So again, that's something outside of engineering which I can dip into and then come back into engineering afterwards. So for me, it's just
the world's your oyster
at the moment.
No, that sounds amazing. I mean, just what you were talking about, just for the next 2 years, sounds like the most incredible experience that you're going to have. And then obviously you've got all the other experience that you mentioned that you could go on, and many more for the remainder of your career. So thank you for that, Christian. And Mark, you've already done so much, but tell us about what the future of in the RAF looks like for you.
As long as my body can still take it week in, week out, I'll carry on playing rugby until I just can't do it anymore, and then I'll take up golf, I think. But it is an RAF sport, so but professionally, I'm in a quite a strange but fortunate position. I am pensionable in a few years, and I've completed my full terms of service, and it's just a case of extending and as long as I like it. Then after that, it's really down to me. I want to finish my degree and get my Bachelor of Science. The RAF put me through my degree scheme, which I did in works time, fully funded, fully paid. I want to finish that. Rachel touched on professional recognition. The level I'm at the moment, I'm applying for my iEng in corporate engineering with the British Computer Society. Though from Christian's side of the house, you can also go through IET. You know, for me, that looks really good on a CV, and it's about picking the roles to develop me for when and if I do leave the Air Force, what do I want to do? At the moment, I'm in a quite a high profile staff officer role, so I'm getting the experience of the kind of diplomatic side of things, the building relations with stakeholders, the project management, understanding workforce management, resource management. So it's really, really great opportunity. But I am still itching to go and do the stuff in greens in the less nice places. So I'd love another opportunity to go overseas for a few years. If that happens, fantastic. If not, I will probably look to go to 90 Signals Unit at RAF Leeming and as a flight commander, by which time then, hopefully, if all goes well, be eligible for promotion and competitive for promotion, and then just look to progress my career naturally. But again, like I said, taking the opportunities as they come to fruition.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. I think that's a great sort of leaving note there from you, is, you know, take those opportunities as they come up and really grasp them kind of with both hands. So that's great. Thank you very much. I am going to be handing back to Jessica now. I can't believe we've got so far through the webinar already, just talking to you guys. And I know Jess has got some questions from our students, and then we're going to hear about how to get the job with the RAF.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. So, Christian, the first question is from you, from one of our students, and it's Darren at Leeds Beckett, and they have asked, how often do you get to work on the aircraft? And then also the second part of the question is, do you have a typical day, or is every day different? So yeah, the first part is, how often do you get to work on the actual aircraft itself?
So as a staff officer, I don't work on aircraft as much. I think it's important to remember though that we have, as officers, we don't tend to work on aircraft. You know, the technicians in the Air Force, they spend the best part of 2 to 3 years before they're even allowed anywhere near an actual aircraft. We do 6 months of engineering training. So our job isn't really to work on aircraft itself. Now, saying that, there are times when I do need to go down to a squadron to look at aircraft or to speak to the engineers on the squadron. If you're a Django or if you're on a squadron, instead you'll be working next to aircraft all the time. And again, if you're making a decision about an aircraft, you need to have, you need to put your eyes on it. You need to be able to see what you're working with before you can make a decision. So it really depends on the job.
Yeah.
The second part of the question about day-to-day job.
Yeah.
It really depends. It's pretty cliche to say that not every day is the same, but next week I've got a course about how the military provide assistance to civilian authorities, and then I'm showing some farmers around some aircraft, and then going to RAF Coningsby to discuss different ways of capturing data. So it really does change day in and day out, and through all of that as well, you've got you can do phys, you can go to the gym. It's part of work time if you've got time to do it. You've got meetings, you've got social events, you've got all sorts of things which fill your day up as part of your job as an engineer officer. And
do you feel like you can balance all that, Christian?
Yeah, so I mean, it's part of the training, right? It's being able to balance, what's important, what needs to be done now, what can be done a bit later, and the things like, at the end of the day, we're in the military, so things like gym and these other things, if needed, you drop all that to concentrate on the important thing in work. So Yes. That's
And no day's the same even. Every day's different, which sounds like a good job, good answer. Next question, I think will be definitely for Mark. So this is from Robin at the University of Lancaster, and they have asked, how does the RAF support against cyber attacks in the UK and across the world? So quite a deep question there.
Very
Good
deep
question, Mark.
question. Yes. I partially scripted this because classification of this is, only so much can go into, and I
Of
don't want
course.
to overstep on this forum, but we all watch the news. The cyber threat is real. It's not just from nation states, it's unconventional actors, and they're ever present. This can be, potential Russia and China's. This can be polarized political extremists. If you think of Anonymous as quite a high profile one, down to script kiddies and people who just want to test their skills and see, what can I actually do? Can I penetrate a system that's meant to be top level security, from their bedroom? We have to be massively cognizant of where the threat vectors come from. There's big companies have regularly hacked, banks, the NHS, the MOD. They've all been high profile in the news. So how do we protect that? Coming back to the question, there's just continuous around the clock, 24/7, 365 security. That's physical security, that's network monitoring, understanding operations, analysis of data that's coming in, where the threat vector's coming from, how new is the threat, how do we combat that threat through simple things like virus updates, security patches, so on and so forth, down to the really high skilled cyber warriors who will go and defend actively a system if it's under attack. We have some really, really skilled people in both the regular and reserve space who are able to do that job to such a high proficient level, for not just the MOD but for government and for other non-government organizations. We are pretty robust. We're not infallible. You're only as good as your last security patch and update, and people are always out there innovating on how to cause havoc, but we always trying to stay one step ahead of that curve if we can. That's not just computer systems or networks, that's crossing boundaries into Christian's space, where where he was talking about iStar aircraft are data centric, they're data hungry, constantly collecting data, the data transfer. There's so many different aspects and roles and responsibilities within that. It's hard to pin down just how do we stop and support. It does need the whole force to be able to do that.
If you could give Robin any advice in terms of assuming that they're interested in applying to the RAF at a stage in their career and wanting to apply to the be an engineering officer in the cyberspace world, is there anything that they can be doing now to start to prepare, whether it be a coding language or anything else that they can be doing to feel as though they're going to be a better candidate when they do go on to apply?
If we're looking solely at cyber, which isn't quite cyberspace, is a slight understanding barrier there. Cyber is the high level of activity that goes on, rather than the cyberspace where we do infrastructure, communications, data links, so on and so forth. If you're looking for cyber, use something called Sophia 8, which is a skills framework, and just try and map yourself to that. How can I get knowledge? How can I get skills, experience? How can I exhibit the right behaviors to be able to really, really, hit the mark for what we're looking for in cyber? Within the cyberspace profession, we'll take people in and we'll provide you along that pathway through the phase 2 training at RAF Gosford to give you that introductory level. You can then opt to go and develop that further through modules with the Cyber Defence Academy at Shrivenham. There are opportunities for job roles within the Air Force that you'll apply for, and if you show the right attributes and the knowledge, skills, experience, you then go onto a selection board. But it's very much about if you come in from the base level of a good level of understanding how your career arc can pan out. I could list off courses, but it's not a finite list. I would be here all day.
Right.
Just try and have a breadth
researching.
of understanding and some experience, and
Yeah.
that will really put you in good stead and make you extremely competitive.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark, for that. That was a brilliant answer. And sorry to put you on the spot there. We've got another question in from Olivia at Manchester Met. And Rich, I'm going to aim this one at you, if that's okay. And that is, how does the RAF support you with relocation? And can you expect to be deployed at any time?
Okay, so relocation tends to be when you've finished a tour. So you will get help with removal costs. For example, if you are living in a house, they will pay fully for your removals. If you are singly living in the block or the officer's mess, then you get a certain amount of money that's allocated to you. If you've got an awful lot of kit, then it might be that you've got to pay a little bit out of your own pocket. But you also get 5 days relocation leave as well, which will help you get set up in your new environment. And sorry, what was the other part of the question? Deployments?
Yes. Can you expect to be deployed at any time?
Okay, so you get put on a list. So depending on what your skill set is, they might need so many different people in different locations across the world. Generally, as an engineering officer, and fellas, please forgive me if I get this wrong, but I would suggest you're probably going to do a 6-month tour every 2 years.
Okay.
Does that sound right, gents?
Probably less than that. It
Less,
depends on
yeah.
what job you do, but it really depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, if you're on a formed unit, say from the cyberspace perspective, we'll take 90SU as an example. There are opportunities for the officer cadre to go out with their deployments. They're not as frequent as they used to be. We're not actually in an active state of conflict, but there are opportunities. And then there's the opportunity for the more regular turnaround to do those. I think Christian and myself have both highlighted as junior officers, we're looking to develop our skill set and get some exposure and experience. So we're quite keen to volunteer for those. There's not many from the cyberspace side of house, but that doesn't mean that it's not achievable. I've applied for one completely out of profession, out of branch, to do media operations in Eastern Europe. So that's, an opportunity completely out of my trained skill set that I can apply to go and do. So there's, again, like we keep saying, continuous opportunities for development. It depends on the role, as Christian has said, and also the individual to a degree.
Yeah. That's good. That's good that you can almost, again, make it more personalized to you and what you're wanting to achieve as well, which is great. So thank you so much. And thank you, Rachel, for your input there as well. So next we want to talk a bit about the application process. So I'm going to come back to you, Rich, with this one. So please could you tell our students about the application process, and can you give us an overview of what to expect when applying to become an engineering officer?
Yep, sure. So hopefully we've enthralled you enough that you want to get onto the Gradcracker hub and press apply, get more information. So as soon as you've put your application in, it will take you a number of hours, if I'm honest, because it's quite convoluted and it will ask you all sorts of stuff about education. So put that application in. They will then send it through to something called the virtual AVCO, who will check your eligibility. It then gets sent on to one of the different AVCO hubs located around the UK, and they will reach out to you to get you booked in to come and do a presentation and also a defence aptitude assessment. So with the defence aptitude assessment, it's more to see where your skill set lie. The presentation is to make sure that you prepare yourself well enough to pass your interview, your filter interview. So hopefully you pass all of the defence aptitude assessment, and then you'll get put on to the Shine interview, which is an automated interview. It's where you get sent it across your email, and you get a week in order to answer the questions on there. And I do believe it's 3 attempts to answer those questions. So once you've started it, that's your first attempt. You've got to run through the whole thing. Give it a go is what I would say, because it might be that is the best answer that you get, versus then going away and doing a bit of research and thinking, how on earth am I going to sell that? Quite often, I think if you overthink it, you come across a bit more wooden. So go with what you've got at the beginning. Hopefully it'll be a brilliant answer, and you submit that. You'll then have to go and do a fitness test, and a medical first, followed by a fitness test. If you pass that, then you're on to the Officer and Aircrew Selection Centre, where we'll put you through things like communication exercises. We'll do a desktop exercise where we're asking you loads of different things. You'll do hanger exercises where we're looking at you as a leader, but also as a follower, and seeing how you interact with the rest of your syndicate. And you'll have a second interview. So the first interview is automated. The second interview, Officer and Aircrew Selection Centre, is about 25 minutes, and it's on things like what you've done in your life, what you've done to research the RAF, what you've done about the role, air power. We're looking at you as an individual with regards to leadership, teamwork, communications, any adventurous activity that you've done, charity work that you've done. We want a good all-round person, but we definitely need those positions of responsibility. So if I could give anyone a bit of a top tip now, it's do anything you can to build your CV. So even if you're thinking, well, the RAF may be an option for me, but it may not, it will still stand you in really good stead with any employer out there. Obviously, we are really hoping that you want to come across to us, and you know, it's what we need on the interview phase in order for you to get passed through. If you pass Officer and Aircrew Selection Centre, fantastic, very well done. You'll then get given the dates to go and start the modular initial officer training course. And from then on, it's then on to your professional training, as the gents have already alluded to.
Fantastic. And Christian, I'm going to bring you in here slightly. You know, again, you're kind of a perfect example of just going through the experience yourself. Have you got any top tips you would give to our audience now at maybe any elements of the application process that you think that made you successful? Putting you on the spot there, though.
Yeah.
No pressure.
I would say, as someone who also, I didn't get in first time into the Air Force.
Yeah, you did mention that, yeah.
So, you know, if that's not the case, and hopefully it isn't, hopefully everybody who wants to gets in first time, but take that as a good opportunity to listen to what their feedback is. For me, it was getting more experiences, as Rachel was saying, you know, some charity work, some positions of responsibility, which I did, and I went back and I was a lot better. And really, it's, you know, being told you're not ready yet doesn't mean you're never going to be ready. It just means there's a little bit more work to do. So don't take a no as no forever. Just take it as a you know,
not now.
Work to do.
Yeah.
And would you say, kind of two thoughts there? Did you feel as though when you did get the no, you think, oh, actually, I want to do it more? You know, sometimes it takes a no for you to actually confirm your mindset that this is what I want. Did it do that for you? Or did you feel a bit disheartened and think, oh, no, out of frustration, I'm going to get this? Or how did you feel with that rejection?
I think for me, it was a little bit of both, to be fair. I did my year in industry, and that confirmed that actually, no, what I want to do is the Air Force. And the fact that I didn't get in the first time isn't going to stop me getting in. So it did kind of spur me on. But
good. Yeah. And that's a great mindset to have as well. And I like to say, I think personally, it probably helped them to make that decision that, okay, I am then going to go and make sure that next time when I do it, you know, I am going to be, you know, the right version of me and what they're looking for. So did you say you did extracurricular activities, upskilled yourself, thought outside the box a little bit?
Just everything about the application, I try to improve, you know, the fitness side, my knowledge of air power and things like that. And just part of it is, you know, I was 2 years older at that point, so I've got 2 years more to learn. But part of it is, you know, as you said, there's that I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, so that was it's what I had to do to get what I wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, Christian, how was the fitness test? Because that is something which sometimes when I speak to students, think, oh, how fit do you really need to be?
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's anything that is, you know, people aren't marathon runners. They're not. You don't have to be a marathon. There are lots of marathon runners in the Air Force, but you don't have to do it. You know, if if you're naturally inclined to do some running or go to the gym or play a sport, you're probably more, you're 80–90% of the way there. There's a bit of focus on the fitness test because it's not maybe what you would do normally, but the fitness is there. Sorry.
Go on, Rachel.
Sorry,
You've
can
got
I just add to it?
for us. You have.
We have literally just changed the fitness test. So all you're doing now is running for the fitness test. And we've also given people more time in order to do that 1.5 miles. So as long as you can run 1.5 miles, and it depends on your age and what sex you are as to what levels you need to get. So please have a look on the Fit for Action booklet, which is on the RAF recruitment app, and that tells you that information, unless Gradcracker have got that as well.
We know
Jess,
we
Sophie.
updated it after our call. Yeah.
There you go.
All
So just go
updated.
onto the Gradcracker hub and it will tell you exactly what you need to get on your fitness test.
Fabulous. Perfect. Well, I hope everyone is inspired now and going to rush off this evening to go and put an application in, because honestly, it sounds like a fantastic career. So thank you so much, everyone, for a great insight into the RAF and what life is really like. So remember, everyone, this recording will be available for you to rewatch tomorrow. And it'll also feature on the Gradcracker Hub, or the RAF Gradcracker Hub, and also on the Gradcracker Career Centre. And also remember, we will cut it up into little snippets. And something I keep saying to students at the moment, remember, you can download those snippets and listen to them as little podcasts when you're out and about, you're on the go, commuting to work, commuting to uni, whatever. They're great things to listen to whilst you're on the go. And also remember to mention that you've attended the Gradcracker webinar when going on to apply. As Christian, as Mark said, think about now, showing off, think about your CV. What can you be doing now to really show off that, the RAF is the right career for you? So making sure that you attend these things like the Gradcracker webinars and, showing off that you've attended and is a really great thing to talk about. So yeah, get your applications in. Next week we will be speaking to Cummins, but I won't be coming. It'll be Sophie and Carla, and you'll be speaking to the technology leader that is Cummins. So make sure you do register your interest to attend that session as well. And make sure you submit any questions beforehand. And yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to all three of you. You've been absolutely amazing today. You've given us a really great insight. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much, Sophie, for being so amazing as well. And thanks to the audience. And we'll see you all on Gradcracker soon. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.